All right, so this is not actually going to discuss all of the various math, but to give you an idea of some of the types of math that you're going to look at, there's that math quiz that's on Carmen, which you can take as many times as you need to get the grade that you're looking for. But this should give you an idea of some of the types of math. In class, we will actually work some examples of math, so hopefully that'll help a little bit. Some things that you're going to want to look at are definitely going to be conversions. I highly recommend you download an app, or you use Google, you bookmark one of those conversion sites for things that you end up doing a lot. You'll probably end up memorizing things that you do on a very regular basis, and we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of things to give you hopefully a visual idea of some of the changes between English and metric. But converting metric to English, if you don't use metric, then you don't have to worry about conversions. But if you are handed a design where somebody's measuring in metric, which seems odd to happen in this country, then maybe you do need some conversions. All right, these are probably some of the more common ones that you might find. Cubic feet to gallons, which it does seem a little odd to see that one. This is definitely one you can probably look up, but because we have an innate understanding of gallons because of a gallon of milk and those sorts of things, 5-gallon buckets, we kind of get a rough idea of what that is. So if you're looking at 1 cubic foot is about 7.5 gallons. Now think of a 5-gallon bucket, and you're going to add, a little bit more to that. It kind of gives you an idea of the weight as well. And then the reverse of that, if you need to go gallons to cubic feet, you're going to multiply that by 0.1337 or just 0.13. I think in the landscape industry, it's not necessary that we're so accurate. Accurate down to the inch, accurate down to, from instead of 7.48, 7.5. I think that's close enough. Hectares to acres is something that you definitely will probably need, especially for larger properties. If you're getting that plot plan, it might be measured in hectares, so check that out. Hectare is 2.471 acres, so you do have to have a little bit of conversion there, but again, you can kind of keep in your head 1 hectare is about 2.5 acres. So in that way, we can kind of keep in our heads rough sizes. Cubic feet to cubic yards is one you'll probably do a lot. So if you're in cubic feet, to convert that to cubic yards, you divide by 27. The reason for that is fairly simple. A cubic yard is 3 by 3 by 3, and 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So that's a fairly easy one. Obviously, to go to the reverse, you're going to multiply by 27. Celsius to Fahrenheit, we probably aren't going to need to do a whole lot. It's a weirdo conversion, as you can see here. But again, you might see things weather-wise in an app. You can obviously set an app to do whatever temperatures you want to do. The metric system is actually really quite easy once you get to learning it because it's all in units of 10. So 10 millimeters is a centimeter, 100 centimeters is a meter, 1,000 meters is a kilometer. So that's really, really easy for us to deal with. 100 grams is 0.1 kilograms. 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams. So it's really, and the meaning's milligram. Milli means 1,000. So it really does actually make more sense. But because we've grown up on English units, sometimes it's very difficult for us to think, oh, well, I don't know how long a centimeter is relative to an inch. Well, roughly 2.5 centimeters is an inch. So that's sometimes a little bit easier. Those are sometimes the conversions, but if you simply stick to the units that you're familiar with, you should not have to worry about converting back and forth. So to give you some rough ideas of things that we're probably used to, 1 meter is 3.28 feet, so roughly 3.3 feet. So if you think of a yard, a meter is 0.3 feet longer than a yard. Yard being 3 feet, obviously. 100 feet, length of a football field, 30.48 or 30.5 meters. So a little bit different. But again, most of us can think of the rough length of a football field. If you want to take the meters to feet and go back the other direction, 1 yard is 0.91 meters. And this one sometimes we do see because of pesticides and how they're labeled, because a lot of times they will say X number of milliliters. Sometimes they say it X number of milliliters per liter, and then you need to know how many gallons that is. So again, you can use Google to go ahead and convert that. But if you look at 1 gallon, it's not quite 4 liters, but just about 3.78 liters. So again, that gives us an idea of, if I'm holding a gallon of milk, that's pretty darn close to 4 liters. I never worry about any shape of a bed. Even these weirdo shapes, or you have bed lines that are strange, or you've got a strange property or something like that. Everything converts to circles, triangles, and rectangles or squares. And those are really, really easy ones. So if you know length times width, if you know 1/2 base times height, if you know pi r squared, those are the areas for those things. You can convert everything else into little tiny areas. Here's where I would say be consistent. If you are outside taking measurements and you write 5.2, you need to know in your head, does that mean 5 feet 2 inches or 5.17 feet? Because 0.2 of an inch is 0.17. So you need to make sure you're aware that you are always writing things consistently. And if you're the only one taking measurements and doing the design and doing the estimate, then it's fine. You can just be consistent. But if you have to hand that to somebody else, you need to make sure that they know what your notations mean. So here's a conversion for inches to decimal parts for a foot, but if you have inches, you just divide by 12, and then that gives you your decimal if that's what you're looking for. I put this in here for more of a weight thing so that you can look at a volume. We do a lot of volumes, how many cubic yards of topsoil, how many cubic yards of mulch. Even if you're buying bagged mulch, it comes by the cubic foot. So you need to know roughly how much that's going to be. So if you look at the different depths in inches, so this is cubic yards per square surface foot. In other words, a 1 by 1 foot by 1 foot square, that's 2 inches of depth, is 0.006 cubic yards. If you're 10 feet deep, it's 370 cubic yards. Right? So that's kind of where that conversion comes in there. I would only look to a chart like this if you didn't know how to do something, if you've never done something before and you needed a rough idea of how long it takes you to build something. So the means estimating guide has these charts in it. And if you have never done any sort of retaining wall work and you're trying to do an estimate, then you can pick out the different types of retaining walls. A stone retaining wall 3 feet above grade dry set, it should take 2.742 hours per linear foot. That's what that unit is. LF is linear foot. That's assuming one person. Now, you're probably going to have more people than that. In fact, it's a lot more efficient to do 2 people. 2 people can do more than 2 times the work of one individual. But that gives you a rough idea of how long it takes to do something. How long does it take to put in a chain link fence? Right? So this is 1 linear foot, should take you 0.096 hours to do that. Security fencing, 16 foot high, might take you 1.2 hours per linear foot of fence. So if you've got 30 linear feet of fence, then you know it should take you approximately 35 hours to put that in. Now you divide that out by the number of people that you've got. Labor is always a tough one because somebody who's skilled at doing something is going to take a lot less time than a crew that you're training. Or even if you have a very skilled crew, but now you are doing something that they've never done before, they might take a little bit more time. So you have to budget for those types of things based on the skill of your crew as well. Some other things to consider when it comes to doing the math portion of the estimating and bidding. You can easily figure out the costs for every single thing that goes into a design, for every single plant, for every single piece of hardscaping, for all of the materials, and you can simply estimate an overage or a breakage, that sort of thing. For example, if you're estimating pavers, we know we're going to have to make some cuts. So even if it says I need 382 pavers, you're probably going to order 420 pavers simply because you know you're going to have to cut some of them. You might drop some of them. Occasionally you go to make a cut and the thing cracks and breaks. So we do have a little bit of overage to deal with. But regardless, we can figure out the cost of everything that goes physically into the landscape. But when you're running a business, there's so much more to it. You might have rent. You might have other salaries, administrative assistants. Maybe you've got an accountant on file. All of those things are going to cost money. Are you paying advertising? Does everyone on your team have a company cell phone? What about company vehicles? Are you providing uniforms? Insurance is a huge one. How much is your vehicle maintenance? And these are some things that are rough costs. So what you do is you take your overhead. You have a monthly rent on your building. You know you have these payments on your vehicles. You know you have these payments on your equipment, and then you have to divide that across everything because you're going to pay for that truck whether you use it or not. You're going to pay for that skid steer whether you're using it or not on any given job. So you have to break that out and divide that out across all of your projects. In the landscape industry, profit is about 10%. If your profit starts going below 5%, you really need to take a look at what you're doing. If your profit starts getting above 15%, again, you probably need to take a look at what you're doing because you might be losing jobs because you're charging too much. I have heard of companies making as much as 20%, particularly nowadays when there's so much business and not enough work, so the laws of supply and demand are driving prices up. But in general, you're looking at a roughly 10 to 12% profit. There's lots of other things to consider. We're going to talk more about all of these, but lots of these are places that you can go to get more information. Obviously, the Department of Taxation is a fantastic place to go to get a lot of references, but it is a difficult website to rummage through and to find things that you need. So I highly recommend you spend some time on there or talk to your Better Business or your Small Business Association and get more information on that. If you're going to run a business, you do need to have a vendor's license. And so you can see the different licensing that allows you to collect sales tax. It also allows you to buy things at a wholesale level rather than at the retail level. So having that vendor's license becomes important. You need a nursing dealer's license to sell plants, and so that's something that the state of Ohio has. If you were to move out of the state, you might find different states have different rules and regulations, but you definitely need a nursery dealer's license to sell plants in the state of Ohio. It's pretty much just an online form. You can see it costs about $125 per location, so if you were expanding and had 4 or 5 locations, you would need a nursery dealer's license for each one of those locations. If you are in an area that all of your work, for example, is done in Medina County, sales tax becomes a little bit easier to calculate. But maybe some of your sales are in Medina, some in Summit, some in Stark, some in Wayne, maybe down to Carroll County, those sorts of things, or maybe up in Cuyahoga County. Then every one of those counties has a different tax rate, and you're going to have to pay every single one of those counties their taxes. So you're going to need to be charging people a little bit different. Used to be in the landscape industry that you were only charged on the physical things. You weren't charged taxes on the services, but basically now they're charging taxes on everything. So you're going to have to tax everything that you do as part of the landscape industry. Know your local ordinances. Do you need a permit to put up a fence? At what height might you need a permit? What is the tallest fence you're allowed to put up? Do you need a permit to put in a patio? You'll probably need one if you're going to build a shed or a gazebo, something that would be considered a permanent structure. But do you need one to build a paver patio? Do you need one for a fire pit? Are you in an area where there are no zoning ordinances because you're in a township? So you'll need to get on your local zoning commission board because every county and every city is a little bit different. And if you're really, really struggling, that's what the Small Business Administration is there to do. I highly recommend you go to their website and contact those folks and get some information. They will definitely help you. Okay, if you got any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch.